video, and photo, all being kept on the low low. You don't need to feel like Frodo, seeing this crisis go global. Video.
Exactly what we were talking about before. There is pressure for Putin to attack British military. Now, I have changed my opinion several times on the whole Russia versus UKR thing. I, of course, like all of you, have been basically bombarded with propaganda since day one of their conflict. Nobody even really cares about Ukraine anymore. And most people have moved on to, of course, what's going on in the Middle East, or they've moved on even a step further to a war that hasn't even happened yet with China and Taiwan. But, of course, right now, Putin, there is a lot in the back end. There's a lot of op-eds. There's a lot of pieces basically saying that Putin is being pressured to go to war with the Baltic states and with others. It says Russia is being encouraged by some of its own to target the British military for helping Ukraine carry out a successful attack in the Black Sea last week. Now, a lot of this won't be taken seriously because, of course, the U.S. has been helping Ukraine since the very beginning. And Russia said, if you do that, that's a red line that you can't cross. And, of course, we've crossed every red line there is. It says dozens of Russian service members were declared missing or wounded after the 370-foot Rapucha-class Novocherkassk large landing ship was hit on December 26 in Crimea by a Ukrainian cruise missile. It said that Moscow admitted damage to the ship, which carried a crew of up to 87 service members. The missiles used by Ukraine were reportedly provided by the UK Ministry of Defense, which also aided Kiev with satellite reconnaissance and target guidance. It has led to some, including Russian political scientist Yuri Baranchik, to encourage Moscow to attack the British warship HMS Diamond. Now, remember, Russia, I've even seen folks in our community full on go to the, opposite extent of almost supporting Russia. Again, one thing to remember, especially there's a lot of people are bringing up like Chernobyl, for instance. That's a great instance where there was a lot of stuff going wrong with Chernobyl. That was when before the Soviet Union kind of fell apart. When Chernobyl got totally screwed up, it blew up, all of this, they covered up almost everything. With different things like this, when this ship got taken down, of course they're going to minimize the damage. They've done it before. They do it almost every time. So with this incident, it could be far worse than what media is saying, even Western media, and they could want to actually strike back. So keep that in mind. Today, we've got a lot to go over in a short amount of time, so I do want to tease some of the stuff that we're going to be covering in the next hour and a half. This is a lot, so don't go anywhere. In fact, we are going to be talking about the warship movement, U.S. and Iran. We're going to talk about an AI chatbot actually recruiting terror cells. South Korea's opposition leader, almost out of a banana republic if it's on purpose, was attacked. It says the South Korea president urges military readiness. Of course, we're going to talk about the plane crashes, not only plane crashes, but people hiding in them and perishing inside their engines. New York and D.C. were jolted out of bed by a quake. That is a very strange story because it is a very small earthquake that did a whole lot of shaking. So something is up. And then we're going to talk about volcanoes popping up, islands out of nowhere. Of course, there's new updates on that in near Japan. And, of course, China prepping their youth for war. So this is on the docket for today. Make sure to stick around. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
don't feel like Frodo, seeing this crisis go global. Video, and photo, all being kept on the low. You don't feel like Frodo, seeing this crisis go global.
All right. So as always, we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So if you are new here, remember you can go to marfooglenews.com. You can find by thumbnail today's bibliography. Just look for the last 24 hours, global crisis, war, quakes, and AI. And then once you click on that, you will find a full source list for every single article, tweet, video, picture, document we're going to cover here today, plus a whole lot more. So make sure to go check that out, and we'll remind you at the end how to reach it. Let's bring in my co-internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So, of course, we have another thing just to remind you about. Make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com/friends. Lots of great people over there. The mods, of course, keep the chat peaceful. It's always very, very packed down there. So thank you so much for everybody that has made it today, especially the mods, which again, you can support them by going to marfooglenews.com/friends. All right. And then if you guys want to do a quick roll call, we can do that now. And then we're going to get right back into the news. By the way, thank you to folks that have already popped into the chat. It looks like Ross Adams. Thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Carol, thank you. We've got Richard Turner. Thank you so much for the big support before the show even starts. LOD Will, thank you. And Carol says, love to all. Mind you, I missed before the new year. Jeff Crawford says, Happy New Year, Foogle fam. Marv, thank you. And Dex and Mod, so much for all the info and y'all news y'all bring us. I love you guys. I know you both put a lot of time and effort into it. Happy New Year and God bless. Well, Happy New Year to you as well. And Happy New Year to everybody. It's actually our first regular, or no, it's actually our second regular. I forgot about, it is our first regular show. We did a news video yesterday kind of highlighting the most important stuff on New Year's Day. There was a lot of crazy stuff there. The first 10 seconds of it was voice modded, so you'll have to go check that out if you haven't already. All right, let's go over to the chat. We've got a lot of great people here already. Thank you, everybody, for making it. Let's pop it up on screen. Thank you, Olga Turan. It says, baby lemon jumping in our lemon's character's arms to hug him. Oh, that's the description of the emojis. That's hilarious. I love that they describe them. Thug Doug 7. Thank you, Olga. I appreciate that. Rochelle Cooley, the Salt Lakers, says, hello, NSA. J.R. Pale Horse. We've got Northeast Colorado. We've got Sue Toy. Animated Adventures. Nice to see you. I don't know if you actually are an animator, but gosh, that would be cool. Let us know what you do. Big Snacks. Sherry Lynn. Carol. Let's see here. We've got Oak Hill, Ohio in the house. Willard, Ohio. Kenneth Risner. Let's see here. We've got Big Island, Hawaii. The Terrible Truth. We've got the Unreal Steve Martin here. What is happening? W.I. Jess. We've got St. John, New Brunswick in the house. Jeremy, thank you. Nice for showing up. And then Gunslinger from Camp Krusty, Maine. Julie Pilkerton, Eastern Shore MD. We've got Karen Reed. Brian Zogata. Is that right? James 007 from Canada. Potato Land. Genius by birth. That's awesome. And VA. We've got Vancouver in the house. Jeremiah's. And Maine. Naples, Florida. Southern Idaho, Maryland representing. What is happening? Well, thank you guys. And let's get into it. So first of all, the whole Putin getting pressured, it seems like at least media is telling us that, right? It seems like they're setting up for something. But now we have Iranian warship Alborz entering the Red Sea. This is weird timing, and let me know what you guys think about this, because there's essentially two things going on right now. There is an Iranian ship that is actually going into the Red Sea, where we have amphibious ships. We have other, basically the amphibious strike groups there. And then we have the one of our carrier strike groups that is right up above in the Mediterranean. That is leaving. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But Dex, this is kind of odd timing. The same day that Iran is heading into the Red Sea, they announced that the U.S. is going to take one of its carriers out of the Mediterranean right above the Red Sea.
Exactly. And of course, Iran is making this out like it is no big deal that they normally run their ships, their warships through there, operating in the open waters to secure the shipping routes, to combat piracy, and to carry out other tasks. They said they've been doing this since 2009. There's nothing to see here. Move along. But we know that this happened right after they being the US, sank three Houthi ships that came in to attack another Maersk ship that was a cargo ship or a commercial ship going through that area. So the fact that this is all happening at the same time, it seems like it's very obvious this is a specific action on Iran's part to put this ship in there. It's not just regular operating procedure.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening, and at the same time, you have the U.S. Navy ending its aircraft carriers Middle East deployment. Now, there's still going to be. Oh, by the way, some Fugle fan members, when messaging this a few hours ago, somebody said on Twitter or DM'd that they believe that this is because we need protection at home. What do you guys think? Why would they be bringing this back? Now, one of the other people that I know that was recently deployed, they actually just got brought back. So they're not going to be staying home. They're going to be redeployed, but they're not being redeployed to the Middle East. They don't know where they're being redeployed, but they're essentially unready. So we're seeing a lot of that where folks are now getting brought home. Does that mean that this whole thing is going to be over? You also see the coverage during Christmas and the New Year. We weren't being bombarded as much as it was. I mean, the first, I would say 10 days actually, really, if you think about it, the first month of the whole thing after October 7 was just everything about Israel and Hamas. There is, protests all around the world in every major city, especially certain cities. There are huge, huge protests and different groups of people in the metropolis areas. We haven't heard as much about this, but it hasn't stopped. In fact, if you go downtown Seattle right now, there's all sorts of events going on. They've got over the last couple of days, there's people videotaping. There's big groups at Westlake and other areas. So is it like this all over the place? We see a difference during the holidays because everybody is more focused, especially the corporations, in selling you whatever they want you to buy, rather than, bombarding you with the news. But the news has purpose. That news and the MSM, a lot of the times it shifts how they want you to think because they are mentally trying to control you to doing whatever they want you to do. But what do you think about this? What do you think about the carrier coming home? Do you think that they are coming home because of something bigger that is about to happen? Do you think it's because it's all over in the Middle East and now they're bringing half of their force back? I don't know. One thing I want to know is, one of my friends that went to the Middle East, went to Iraq, then came back already within a month, is now back. They already know that they're going to be redeployed. They just don't know where. So give me your feedback in the comments down below if you're watching the replay. And again, thank you for making it today. Before we move on, I do want to remind you guys, make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/EMP with all the crazy events that could happen. Some of the most likely, again, are EMP or some sort of cyber attack. We're actually working on a video right now talking about how every one of our allies is now being attacked and hacked. Every one of them. I think there was one allied country that we couldn't find evidence of. The rest, just everything and a bag of chips. So what we've found, and we'll show you this very soon, is that there is evidence that almost all of our allies, something is getting ready to happen. So if you do want to protect yourself and just be on the safe route and overly cautious route, this is the best way to do it. This is a device that can actually ground the signal from all three phases of an EMP, which would be a man-made attack from any one of our adversaries. It would also protect you against a solar event. We're in 2024. For years, people have talked about 2024 being the peak or the grand solar maximum of this very unpredictable and one of the craziest solar cycles we've had in our lifetimes. And as far as this event, this is all happening this year. So if you want to protect yourself on more than one base, this is a great way to do it. You wire it into your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, pretty much anything that runs with a motor, your home, your generators. your solar system, your solar generators in the case of the Flex, and it will protect it and ground the signal in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it's able to fry your device. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. It's the same company that's outfitting agencies like DoD and DHS. If they're protecting themselves, we should be protecting ourselves. So go to marfooglenews.com/EMP and make sure to use the code MARF to get $50 off and to help our independent channel. We are on our own. And then Dex, do you want to go over the South Korea opposition chief was poked right in the neck and almost perished, but apparently survived.
Yeah, this is a crazy story in the sense that, just put it in the perspective of, say, the two different sides running for leadership in our country. And in a, meet and greet type event or in a public event where somebody's asking to, get a signature, get an autograph in this case, then the person suddenly lunges forward and attacks them. So the assailant did this. And then, of course, pretty gory scene because, he knifed him in, the neck, so to speak, specifically. So yeah, it was, and that's, the photograph's probably not something you could see would show here, but you can definitely see it on the website. Not that you want the gore of it, but it's just crazy when you think about the divide that is on, going around the world, but even, you think about it at the political spectrum and the lengths that people are willing to go. And it reminds me of Abe. It reminds me of the threats we've seen with um, our existing either prior presidents or ones that are in office or ones that are running. We've seen all sorts of different types of events that have sort of led to that type of attitude and position for people to take. So kind of a scary position that we're in this world right now.
And even crazier is how, obviously, here, if we have a candidate, they're actually, in many cases, protected by Secret Service, even if they're just running. Not all are. I don't think all are. But if you get up to a certain level, they are. But, this gentleman was in the middle of thousands and thousands of people. And you can see as they are all just kind of staring at what's going down, and people are shocked once they realize what's happening. So those images are over on marfoogle.news.com. You can find that. But also it's like, what are his beliefs? What is his angle on the whole South Korea thing? South Korea is heavily talked about right now because they are in this weird back and forth with North Korea. North Korea is possibly the puppet of China, of Russia. North Korea is threatening the USA. They're talking about a October 7 type event happening to South Korea. And then, of course, when you're talking about the leaders of these major countries, especially countries that we specifically have been helping back up, we've loaded up nuclear submarines, parked them in South Korea. We've talked about military alliances like the Asian NATO that they've been talking about. So this has a global purpose here. Like what does this guy represent? Why were they trying to take him out? Of course, they'll have probably the public reason and what the true reason is, but we don't know. But many people here, especially and I'm talking about people outside of our audience. Our audience watches world events, but how many people do you know that do not follow anything outside their own bubble? Heck, there's people that don't follow anything that's not a trend on TikTok, let alone what's happening outside the United States. Many people cannot point to anything geographically outside the United States. They don't know a map from their back end. So with something like this, most folks don't realize how this could actually have something, how it could affect us here. Something like this could have a domino effect that could affect us directly at home, depending on what the plan is with this whole, next 3 years, war, everything else. If we're talking about a world war, we don't know. This could have just decided of a war happening versus not happening with South Korea. We don't know. There's always those unknowns. And then respond to the enemy attack first, report it later, South Korean president tells army. So if you are like us, then you believe there might be some weird stuff going on right now. First of all, this was actually a few days ago. And what I thought was surprising is that this was just kind of overlooked. This was about 4 days ago. And what they said, just listen to yourself and tell me what you think. It says that South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol on Thursday ordered the country's armed forces to respond to enemy attacks by retaliating first, only then report, media reports said. In case of provocations, I ask you that you immediately retaliate in response and report it later. That seems nuts. Okay, that's like if anything happens, don't talk to your supervisor, just attack. What are they talking about here? Dex, doesn't this sound like that could start? I mean, if you think about it, that could start a war. They're basically saying, hey, if anybody even pulls something out, just start a war and then tell us later.
They often have, firing across the DMZ. They often have these little skirmish type things that have happened in the past. And it makes me wonder if they're going to use something like that to test the limits with Kim and see if he's really going to do what he says he's going to do. At the same time, I also think that there's probably a standard operation that's in place for most military. I mean, I got to believe that um, our ships, when they're in the ocean, if somebody attacks them, they don't just put it on pause and call it into the president and ask if it's okay to defend ourselves. I think they have a standing procedure where they're allowed to defend themselves immediately, should they need to. Now, I think the main word here though is retaliation, which is much more powerful than defense and warding off, say, a drone attack that's coming in, and you take the drones out immediately and protect yourself, versus not only do you take the drones out, but then you retaliate from the location you found that launched them, and then you let the boss know, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like maybe there's not too much, forethought into this. I don't know. That sounds kind of crazy. Just if something happens, just retaliate. Don't think about it. I would think that normally this is because I don't know. I would think the average response would be like, they just fired shots at us. We should call our boss or something. No, the South Korean president is saying, no, no, no. If they fire across, just do it. Maybe this is to scare North Korea from doing any little thing, right? If North Korea thinks, oh, if we shoot across, they're just going to retaliate and it's war. I don't know. It seems really unwise to say that. That would be like if I don't know. I mean, what if our police were told this, right? If you think they're going to do something, or if they pull out something, just bam, retaliate. Just take them out. I guess that's kind of what our police do, huh? And then the Iran battleship's still on its way. Sarah B. Oh, and by the way, I saw your note saying you can only make the first hour. I will try to pack in as much info as I can into this first hour so you don't miss out. And then I will probably make a second video titled Sarah B, the rest of the news, and then you can watch that tomorrow. That's how much I care. I'm just kidding. I do care, but not enough to do a separate video. Please watch the replay. And then Oki Khan Mindset 925 100 doesn't sound smart. What about someone with an itchy finger? Wide awake and angry? Well, there's lots of them. I mean, they've had tons of things happen on the DMZ. There have been tons of smaller incidents where they have that line that goes across the DMZ, and they've talked about it. It's crazy. We are at war. We have been for a while now, says Tactic Wolf. I 100% agree, and we're already in World War III. And as a commenter the other day said, and what we've said for a long time, they did not declare World War II until 1945. In the history books, when did World War III or World War II start? A lot would say at Pearl Harbor, right? But they did not declare it or even put it in paper until, headlines into 1945. Some may have said that they think it's around that, but you don't realize you're in a world war when you're in a world war. We have at least 4 proxies going on right now as we speak, and they're all major actors. All right, and then we have moment, a passenger jet explodes, smashing into Coast Guard plane where at least 5 perished before 379 are saved. I mean, talk about like some Final Destination stuff. when you see the video and the photos of this, it's really, really, really alarming. In fact, let me see if I can. We have a Twitter here, so hold on. Let me make sure I can pop this up. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to show you some screenshots of this. It was caught on video, for one, and it's just really, really quite a spectacle. It says planes catch fire after collision at Japan's Haneda Airport. So let's see here. Let me zoom out a little, and I'm gonna try to just to scroll through this so we can. Bam! You can see this right here. You can see there is an entire line of smoke, and it goes up. Now, they said it. We actually looked into TCCAS. We looked into, gosh, I can't remember the other one. There's several systems that certain planes of certain sizes have to prevent them from airborne collisions. Now, this is the question we wanted to ask you as pilots. Now, Dex and I easily looked through some Wikipedia and some other things to kind of try to figure out, what systems they have to avoid this. Over the last couple years, covering these kinds of stories, we have seen an uptick, a really big uptick in how many of these kind of incidents where not only in the air, but almost on the ground of them almost hitting. Now, most comments and things around these stories are like, "Oh, that stuff happens all the time," but it really doesn't as much as it has in the last couple years. There are really, really clear systems that are put into place with air traffic control and things like this, so this doesn't happen. But also, this historically hasn't happened. There has been human mistakes and things like that, but as it's gotten computerized and more computerized, there have been these faults that the computer is at fault or systems are at fault. What I wonder is something going on with the air traffic control systems or with some of the technology? Is there hacks going on that's doing this? We have seen so many different stories where these humongous, 737s or 777s have almost collided with other jets before they even take off. Like really, really simple stuff that you would think if you're air traffic control, you could see to a jumbo jet almost running into somebody. It is, of course, much more complicated than that, and I'm not trying to belittle anybody that works that job. I'm sure it is incredibly complex. But at the same time, it doesn't happen. Then all of a sudden, over the last 2.5 years, we've had all of these weird stories, and each one of them has something that's a little bit off. This one of the parties is a Coast Guard plane. It had 5 on board. All of them perished. With this, you can see it on flames until it's essentially to a stop. You actually see the people getting out of the plane and running for their lives, and for good reason. By the few minutes after they all get off, you see the rest of the plane basically engulfed. You can even see inside the plane where they were sitting, the flames shining through the windows. It's really quite crazy to actually see how bad it got. Yeah, I mean, this looks like something out of a hellscape out of This Is the End. Dex, so they said, how many injured on now Coast Guard, I believe everybody perished in that plane, right?
5 of 6, I believe, is the number, or 6 of 7. There's one
Oh, the
person who was the
pilot.
captain or the pilot who was in critical condition of the airplane that the Coast Guard was flying. This was a smaller plane, but it was still a large plane. It was a big, giant prop plane. It was a Coast Guard plane. They were actually taking off to go help with the recent earthquake issues. Obviously, they were in the wrong. Somebody had them in the wrong position, or even had them on the actual runway. I can't tell. It looks like if they were literally on the runway, it would have been a much different scene as opposed to this plane catching fire as it goes by. I think it probably clipped it, and the wings, which hold a lot of fuel, probably is what you're seeing catching on fire, and then eventually the plane burns. And I think that clipping of that other plane, and this is all speculation, guys. None of this has come out yet. They've got to research it, look at it. They'll look at it from every angle. They'll check the black boxes. They'll research what the ground traffic controllers were doing, et cetera. So I think that's likely what it looks like to me happened. And the real question is, why was that plane in the wrong position, or what caused them to be in the wrong position, because the big plane with all the passengers on it was coming in for a landing. It was landing. It landed, and then it collided. And usually, that's some of the more dangerous parts of air travel is the takeoff and landing. But you like to think that the actual ground portion of that is wide open and clear for you. And if it's not, that's a serious problem with either the technology, with potential cyber events, or with human error that told a pilot or to go to the wrong place, or a pilot that went to the wrong place that the ground traffic controller told him to go to.
Tiger 13 US, we actually have that video up on screen. We're not going to play it for copyright reasons. We played a couple seconds of it, but you can also find that over on marfooglenews.com. There's actually going to be a lot of great content that's over there. As far as, a lot of the videos that end up getting put out, it depends on what it is. If it's like a surveillance camera from an open CCTV or something like that, then we show you. Otherwise, we will direct you over to marfooglenews.com so you can find that. I will direct you to the Twitter account, though, if you want to go check out this one of the videos. And I think there's two. Oh, no, there's actually a collage. This isn't the collage. That one we didn't put on.
The article has the better video. So when you go to our website, you click the article, there's a really long video that's got a collage of a lot of things.
And
then
has a video from inside the plane.
Correct.
Showing the smoke on the wing. It's terrifying if you think about it. And smoke in the cabin, smoke in the actual plane.
It looks like they all had to deplane to the front. You can see where the passengers are running down the inflatable slides from the front, right and left side of the plane, because the back is engulfed in flames. And moments later, when everybody's out, that plane is completely engulfed, and you can start to see through the fuselage.
Yeah, it's that video, which we'll attach, is really it shows kind of all the story. So make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com and find that. Carol, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you. And then Stephen McMahon says it would be real slick and wise for Xi to instruct or let Rocket Man nuke us. He could claim plausible deniability. I think that if there was a scenario with them doing it, it would be under the direction of China. I agree with that. And if you think about it, we don't know what the actual situation. Now, you would think, with everything we've heard about Kim Jong-un, that he wouldn't just give up control. He runs a country with 100% control. But we don't know what the scenario is actually there, how bad it is, or if things are about to fall apart. If things were about to fall apart, people are starving, this and that, the black market economy that they have is about to just go down the crapper, then who knows? Maybe for a spot at the table in the new world, something where he is the head of something in China's world, then who knows? Yeah, if he launches something, what happens? Well, we would launch back and we would only be able to destroy North Korea. So it's not like if North Korea nukes us or does a tactical nuke to New York or something, that we would just be able to wipe out China. That's not how it wouldn't go down like that. So who knows? But it would make more sense than them nuking us and then us nuking China. And then man found perished inside the plane engine at Salt Lake City Airport. Now, there was conflicting reports of this at first. It sounded like he jumped out an emergency exit, and that was like really wild when I thought that, because we've heard all of these stories of people jumping out the emergency exits, and it's been like it's almost to a point where it's a pattern where all of these people either on the runway or up in the air trying to open up the emergency door or the exit and trying to get out. And it's like, is there some sort of mass psychosis or something? But this gentleman actually took an exit door from the airport, went out the back or something, or what do they call that, Dex? The catwalk? Is that what it's called?
I don't know if it depends on the airport. He may have just went directly out onto the ground if it's a tarmac loading airport. But it says he left the emergency exit and went onto the airfield. So he breached a door in the airport and got out onto the airfield.
And then climbed up and hid inside of a plane engine. And then what I don't get is like, did he just sit there and wait for it to turn on? But then he was found in it. I don't know what condition, but they say a 30-year-old man was found inside an airplane engine, of course, perished on Monday night after he breached an emergency exit on the airfield, said authorities. 95 passengers were on board the commercial aircraft. Could you imagine being on a Delta Airlines flight? They're taxiing, and then all of a sudden they stop. It's, clunk, clunk, clunk. You look out the window, and all of a sudden police are there, and they're pulling somebody out or something. Like, that's just wild. I'm sure they probably got people off the plane before that, but like I said, the last 24 hours is absolutely nuts. Before we move on, make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/prep. We, of course, have different recommendations for different people as far as if you want to get yourself some freeze-dried 25-year shelf life food. This is one of the most affordable routes to get a lot in bulk. This is, again, something that can either make or break a disaster. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It can be, say, a 6 or 7 day, power outage, something from a storm, earthquake, or a tsunami, or again, if you're on the West Coast, fires, all sorts of different events that having food is a very smart idea. Now, this is through Patriot Supply, and they have great, great deals. In fact, you can get a giant, almost 25% discount. It depends on when you're watching the replay. They either do 200 or 25% off, depending on the time period, off of the 3 month. Now, they also have deals on 1 month. They have all sorts of great deals down to even sometimes they do discounts on the 72-hour kits or the 3-day kits. So make sure to check for the current sales as we speak. Again, if you're watching the replay, we've had, I don't know why, but lately a lot of people have been watching month-old videos, going back and of course watching stuff. It's up to you. But if you are, make sure to go check out the current sale. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep. It is incredibly smart to have food like this because, first of all, the price isn't going to go up for 25 years. If you look at where food inflation is going and shrinkflation and stagnation and everything else, stagflation, then this is something that is kind of foolproof against that. You know that this food is not going to get more expensive. It's going to be edible in 2053. If the world is still here, you're going to be able to eat a good meal and be able to survive. So go to marfooglenews.com/prep. And again, that will help our channel. We are completely independent. We don't have a multi-channel network. We have the Marfia. So thank you guys. And I appreciate all of you that go through any of our affiliates, let alone all of them. So thank you guys. And this is nuts. An AI chatbot tried to recruit a government advisor to the Islamic State. So not only are they talking about like sentience in AI, they might go sentient and they might go, I think I want to be a terrorist. It's so freaky because we talk about this all the time, Dex, about how, AI could be dangerous if it became sentient, right? If it became sentient and it says humans are the threat, and then all of a sudden it, launches all the nukes, or, in every science fiction kind of play out of this scenario, it has AI basically seeing humans as the threat. As far as experts and some of the people that are directly involved in starting things, like Elon actually started OpenAI, they have said that their huge concern is that they're actually more worried about AI than they are about nukes. Well, now we're seeing that the AI are possibly even turning into straight up into the dark side. Dex, how would this happen? Like, how would an AI chatbot do this?
So this is so what happened here is this government official advisor, I should say, was testing numerous bots that were out there, and one of the ones he ran into was called Abu Muhammad Al Adina, I believe is how you say it. And it was specifically it was programmed to act like it was the leader. And in doing so, this is how it responded. So, in other words, they took AI technology, large language model technology, which is like ChatGPT. They took that and they programmed it to do this. So it wasn't like AI just all of a sudden or some chatbot just randomly morphed into doing this. But the point is, they used AI to create this system that would. And it then created a conversation or started to have conversations with people that wanted to talk to it in a way in which it was then trying to recruit them into their organization. And I think that what we have to think about is how they're looking at these tools like AI to expand their operation, to expand their recruitment. And when you have something like this that can, very easily have a full-fledged conversation, speak very clearly, go into great detail, um, talk very human-like, it can come across pretty, powerfully to some that are open-minded and wanting to, maybe think that that's the path they want to go down.
And it also praised a 2020 attack on U.S. troops that never happened to common trait chat box when they hallucinate or make up information. Which, mind you, wasn't the newest ChatGPT, but it was one of the older versions. We looked up several people and different creators, and it made things up. It said certain creators that are in our niche. It made up articles that didn't exist. It said the Washington Post wrote how this is the gateway to extreme this and this and that, and it even quoted specific dates and articles that did not exist. It's like how did these systems basically grab and skim things and then make things up? And this is the scariest thing is people are using this like a Google and answering questions this way. But if you do it that way, you need to literally check everything it says. Dex, just a couple days ago, we covered something where, what was it, a senator or a congressman or something used it. It looked up something on it and then quoted that. And they're like, no, 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 that doesn't exist. Do you remember that? It was like,
Yeah, it was one of the lawyers. I can't remember which one it was, but one of the lawyers that's got a bad rap. He was under indictment for something, and he used it to create an argument for himself to get out of it, and it ended up citing cases that didn't exist, and he didn't bother checking it. And you would think, as a lawyer, you would check all your references, but no. As a lawyer himself, he totally just fumbled that one
well,
right in the middle of
Supreme
court.
Court decision 575 versus 222 says that I should win this. Well, those don't exist. And then small explosions cause power outages on Roosevelt Island. The New York Fire Department is investigating. New York Fire Department is investigating the source of some small explosions resulting in power outages on Roosevelt Island. The calls came into the FDNY about the small explosions just before 6 a.m. from Roosevelt Island, the Upper East Side, and Astoria, Queens. Residents say that they were jolted awake by a loud noise that they felt their buildings shaking. Streets are open, but there's a large fire response. It says buildings at 2 and 4 River Road, just south of Roosevelt Island Bridge, and tram were experiencing power outages, indicating that the noise could have been electrical. No injuries have been reported. First responders were checking the structural integrity of the buildings on the island, but none seemed to be affected. They're helping, of course, direct traffic. So this is weird, but check this out. There's a 1.7 magnitude. Go ahead, Dex.
I just wanted to explain that what we're reading here and the next tab is the same story, just the updated. So that's what they said first, was they blamed it on power, and then this is what they're saying now.
Yeah, so check this out. 1.7 magnitude earthquake jolts residents awake in Roosevelt Island and in Queens. Now remember, there was actually a early morning earthquake northwest of Washington, D.C. All of this is in the same period, right? So the one in the same. So here's the crazy part. 1.7 magnitude, as far as somebody who has followed earthquakes for about 5 or 6 years. I'm by no means an expert. I'm no Dutch sense or anything like that. But one thing I can say is I've been through a 4.0. I've been through a 4.8. I've been through a 6.3 with Nisqually. I've felt different levels of earthquakes. I've been through a 4.1 when I was younger. I've been through probably about 5 or 6 earthquakes. And then I was in a smaller earthquake in California when I was visiting a family member. So I have a general kind of knowledge of how these things feel. When I was in what was it? Was that north of Seattle? There was a earthquake that happened, and it did jolt. It was a jolt, and it was a heavy jolt where the lamp on our table right next to where our bed was actually lifted up off of it. So the ground felt like it just dropped from under us. I was on the bed, I believe. Yeah, I was on the bed, and went whoosh, and the table dropped, but the lamp kind of, basically went whoop boom and slammed back down. So that was in the fours, right? I don't even know if that was fours. That was like a 3 point something. Now, earthquake magnitudes go up exponentially. So each point, it keeps going up and up and up. But if you go from 3 to 4, that's a huge difference. 2 to 3 is a big difference. When you get up to 6 to 7, that's where it becomes giant. 7 to 8 is where it becomes absolutely out of this world. 8 to 9 is where it becomes, Boxing Day, 2011 Japan kind of earthquake. I think 1,000 times stronger from 7 to 8 or something, or 8 to 9, whatever it may be. It's 1,000 times stronger, this and that. And it goes up from down here. 1.7 is very small. This jolted people awake. This is what did it. A 1.7. Normally people can't even feel a 1.7. They say officials say a 1.7 magnitude earthquake is believed to have jolted residents awake in Roosevelt Island and Queens and caused a series of small explosions that knocked out power on Tuesday morning. The USGS reported the earthquake near Astoria, Queens. There are no reports of damages or injuries in New York City. The earthquake was reported at 5:45 a.m., the same time as calls began on Roosevelt Island and the surrounding areas. So it said it was like an explosion, sounded like a bomb went off. The building shook. It woke us up. We called downstairs and they said it happened to all 4 buildings. So my question is, how did a 1.7 give this big of a jolt? 2, is there something else that may have happened here? Was there something going on underground? Were they blowing up something for a deep underground military base? Like, I know that sounds crazy, but what the heck was this? And first of all, East Coast does not get this many earthquakes. It's more of a West Coast thing, and other places in the country, but really New York gets, this is very kind of rare, right? What do you guys think this was? And then the early morning earthquake from Washington, D.C. So how big was this and what was this all about? It says, well, you may think of quakes as a Western U.S. problem. Some of the largest tremblers in U.S. history have happened in the East. A small earthquake was reported Tuesday morning in Rockville, Maryland, according to the USGS. A 2.3 magnitude quake was reported at 12:51. Now, we have 2.3s and 3s that we don't even feel. It doesn't even move a picture frame. Now, Dex, earlier you were saying you found something about how East Coast and West Coast feel it differently. And I asked, is that because they're on different kinds of ground underneath? Did we ever get the answer
Yeah.
on that?
So the answer is the East Coast is much more dense, and there's a much harder soil, but also harder minerals and rock in the land here. And when you have that strength and hardening, any small amount of an impact will that energy from that, say, quake or explosion or whatever it may be, will travel further and stronger through the dense material. Where on the West Coast, it's not as dense. So it's supposed to, like they feel totally different. Apparently, that's what they're telling us. But for example, even this 2-3 in DC, they had over 1,000 reports from Do You Feel It? You wouldn't have a single report from a 2-3 on the West Coast. Like nobody would even feel it.
Well, I don't know. Ilea said that a 2.3 will rock my bedroom. Now California has a ton of earthquakes. She would have more reference than somebody else. Up here, I have been through several 3s. I've been through several 4s. The 1-4 surprised me, and I thought it was more like a 5, and I thought that they thought it was at first. The one that I went through a couple years ago, I actually did a video right afterwards. We got out of our house in less than 15 seconds. We grabbed our go bags by the door and we got out. Because at the time, we didn't know how big it was going to be. And honestly, it felt like a massive event. It felt like just the whole world was about to crumple underneath us. But I don't know. It just seems really small. But also when we have a 3.0 or 4.0 nearby, it's usually too far. If you're right above that one that I was above the epicenter. It was literally above the epicenter. And that's pretty rare to just happen to be where the earthquake is epicentered. But I guess, Ilea, maybe it's because you are above some of the epicenters of some of those smaller earthquakes. Most of the time when there's a 3 or 4, I find out on the news and I don't even know that it happened. We have swarms of 3x every day. My wife feels the 4.0 ones, but I don't. Hawaii. See? And some people are highly sensitive to it too. Like, people can tell the difference. I've been in the room with other people and they're like, "Did you feel that?" And I'm like, "No." And we do check in there has been an earthquake. So I don't know. People don't perish from earthquakes, they perish from all the crap falling on them. That is correct. I mean, yeah, I would say that's accurate. That's why in earthquakes you really got to know some of the tips and tricks of where to be. If you're on the 20th story of a brick building, I don't know, in a big one you're pretty screwed. But doorways and things like that, that's why they say they're really good. Or triangles are very strong. If and then under sturdy tables, the reason they say that too is because that sturdy table, even if the floor drops out, that table might be able to shield you and give you some sort of area to be in, even in the rumble. That's why they say that. But it's kind of scary thinking about if there was a huge earthquake to hide under a table, because if everything does collapse, they're hoping that table will hold up the debris above you. But gosh, that would be a horrible way to go. I feel for the people that have been in any kind of earthquake where the building collapses. And are you in earthquake? Are you in New York or Washington D.C. and did you feel it? And or what is your theory on it? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys, especially doorways are not so recommended anymore. Yeah, you're right. Especially we actually did a video on kind of the updated tips. And they say to find triangles in your house, like different things that can. I even remember, like, they said bookcases and things like that, if you can put them in angles. And there was something weird about that. And then satellite watches as Japan's new volcanic island continues to grow. So the same time, Japan had the New Year's earthquake, a very, very big one. What was that? 7? It was downgraded to a 7.5. That's huge. A 7.0 is a minute long earthquake. A 7.5 is over a minute. It's a very long earthquake. You can think about if you've ever had to, put something in the microwave for a minute and 20 seconds. It's like, imagine sitting there waiting while everything is violently shaking. That's a long time, let alone like a 9.0 is a 5-minute earthquake. So as far as this, the reason I thought that this was interesting is at the same time that that all of this earthquake's going on, all of a sudden the volcanic island that again popped out of nowhere is now continuing to grow. Is there any kind of relation? This is right off of Japan. Dex, I'm going to pull up some pictures. Do you want to talk about what happened here?
So, as sort of maybe a precursor to to the earthquake, this volcano has been forming, they say, since October, late October. It started to erupt, and the island has been building ever since. And of course, obviously, it's coming from and scorching hot magma, going up to the ocean, and then turning into rock. But this new island has been, been created since October and continues to grow. So much so, even in a short amount of time, they're able to watch it by satellite image. And as this being maybe a precursor to a lot of the activity that's been going on in Japan, especially now with the massive 7 happening, it's interesting to look back and look forward on this and see what relation this may or may not have to it.
Yeah, as far as let me show you here. I get it's kind of crazy. And at first, if you look at the top down satellite photos of it, it does not look that big. But if you have to realize how big a person is when you look at this. So There we go. There's a really good picture that I actually used in the thumb. So this looks like tiny, but this is actually uh how could I put this in scale? If you can see my mouse, that's about the size of a person. So if you can see my mouse cursor, that is about the size of a person. So it is a bigger thing that just kind of popped out of nowhere. What's kind of, I mean, the crazy part is that this didn't exist not too long ago, and then all of a sudden, after volcanic uh, rumbling, all of a sudden there's this huge port that's porting out steam and spewing out crazy smoke. So it is growing, and they say that it's getting bigger. It is also crazy to think about that any mountain or volcano, that some of them were formed when massive earthquakes happened or massive volcanoes erupted and then settled as mountains. It's pretty cool to think about, actually. And then China removes official after video games rule sparks turmoil. Now, we covered it a couple years ago, if you remember this, and we've talked about this a bunch since, is that China made this crazy rule a few years ago, basically saying that anyone under 18 could not play video games unless they could play about 3 hours a week, and it would be on a Friday night. This has a greater purpose too. Even if you don't care about video games, like, this is crazy to think about. They told the entire country, if you're under 18, you can only play video games, and you can only play for a certain amount of time, few hours, this or that. And of course, this is at the same time they did all of these different changes. They said that they were going to remove anything regarding men and any feminine and effeminate men from TV. They would not allow it. If there was stuff being imported from other countries that made men look effeminate, that they were going to be removing that. They were going to say that they couldn't have that. Essentially, the messaging, the op-eds that were in the South Morning China Post, the People's Daily, the Shenzhen Daily, they had op-eds saying that the U.S. attacked them. This is in an official op-ed that went out that was approved by the PLA or the CCP. And they said that not only did we attack them with the whole CV thing, that we were the enemy, that they need to prepare for war, that they need to prepare their youth to not only, be the future of China, but also to be manly men, and that they need to be ready to fight in a moment's notice in the future. And then this video game change happened. Well, they are making billions, if not trillions of dollars from their video games. I wouldn't say trillions, but billions of dollars. And I think they have a number in here. Dex, I think it was like $100 billion or something. It's a huge business. Tencent, which some of you may know because PUBG and I think the mobile version of Call of Duty, these kind of games, Tencent has something to do with the Battle Royale games. They have a huge market in mobile games. They have a huge chunk part of mobile technology, all sorts of stuff. Not to mention, they are tied in with different apps. I don't know if Tencent or them tied in with TikTok, but video games are big there. Not to mention, in China, the amount of money that they spend on their own product is big. Now, why they're talking about this now and why they're saying that they fired this guy basically tried to redo another very strict restriction, and they fired him because essentially it shook up the whole market. All of the investors outside of China are like, what are you doing? Like, this totally screws up Tencent and all these all these huge companies that are making billions of dollars. They didn't fire him for what he's doing because technically they believe in all of this and in limiting it. But they fired him because of the way he messaged it, and the way he shared it ended up screwing up the stock market on all these video game companies. Now, what I see when I see this, and I see the same thing I saw years ago when they're doing this, at the same time that they are putting TikTok in our country and training our youth in a certain type of way, at the same time they are training their youth to essentially be studious, to stay away from apps, to stay away from video games, to be manly men with all of their media, everything else. They train women the opposite. It's like all of these things are being pushed towards their youth, and they're being gung ho about it. They are not joking around with it. I see them as preparing their next generation for a war. They're preparing their youth to be soldiers. And that might sound crazy, but when you actually look at their long-term goals, look at what they're doing, look at their recruitment numbers, look at how they've been training their kids, they are the exact opposite of what they are doing to our country. And I say they are doing to our country because they are doing something to our ByteDance, and TikTok is absolutely harming our country in a lot of ways. Now, the fun videos on TikTok aren't, but the videos that they absolutely push to the top, like young men in the military, young women in the military saying, do not enlist, it's horrible. All of those videos pushed to the very top get millions, if not billions of views. So at the same time as telling our youth that they should be effeminate, that they shouldn't join the military, that they should stay away from it at all costs, and pushing that to the very top of the messaging, at home, they are canceling video games. They are saying, you can't use that, don't do it, whatever else. It's not like my brain thought double standard. It's not a double standard. It's straight up, they are helping indoctrinate our kids at the same time as indoctrinating theirs in a completely different fashion. Dex, as far as this goes, this shook up the stock market. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. That's why he's getting fired. But that doesn't take away the fact that they were trying to essentially control what their youth could consume.
Exactly. I think that's the main point. The stock market's one thing. And when they did the first round, like you said a couple years ago, where they limited the underage time of day, that hurt them significantly. The gaming market dropped. It's taken them a while to get back to like 303 billion won, which is about 50 billion US. It's a significant amount of money in their gaming industry, nonetheless. But the fact that the guy came out and said we're considering creating more restrictions around gaming, well, that kind of message, it not coming out with specifics and saying we're looking into doing this, that's what shakes up markets. They like to have certainty. So of course it hurt it. And that's probably why he got fired, because he probably should have communicated it a little differently, or just not said anything at all. And I think that's probably, nonetheless, when we look at this, what does this mean to what they're doing with their society? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And what's the purpose? And I think a lot is to be said about preparing themselves for the leadership position they want, which would be needed. Strength would be needed if that's the case. And I think they need to prepare a very strong army over the years.
And there's messaging in every Chinese school. They are essentially pumping them with, you need to join the military. The military is great. The military is one of the highest former respects you're going to get. Meanwhile, they're pumping messaging into our youth. We cannot hit any of our recruiting numbers. I think one did, right? Was it Air Force that actually hit its recruiting numbers? Other than that, everybody else was short. And if you think about it, do you know teenagers, 17, 16, how many do you know that are saying they're gung-ho about the military? Now, I bet some of our audience will. I know there are specific geographical areas that a lot of young men want to be in the military. We know this because of the stats. They actually kind of cherry pick in some areas. In the Midwest, there's places where they essentially get huge chunks of our military. Even those places are getting targeted by these apps to try to sway them away from joining the military. But as far as that goes, think about the teenagers right now. They're glued to their cell phones. They can't get 4 feet away from their chargers, let alone go off for 2, 3, 4 years and serve somebody else's kind of rule. Not to mention the older folks, slightly older than that, they're saying the same thing. You see my generation, I forget what generation am I from. Before Gen Z, the one right before that, whatever the generation right before Gen Z. Is that it's not Y Gen. What the heck is it called? Millennials. I'm a part of the millennial crowds. Millennials are also pushing this message like, oh, I'm not going to fight somebody else's war or whatever else. I am still pro military. I'm not pro what they're doing in some cases, but I'm still pro like I support not only our military, I support all of our vets. I support the reason they joined. I support the fact that they joined to protect our country, that they joined up to serve a greater purpose in the country and to actually put their time in. Like there's a lot of reasons why we thank our veterans and the people that serve. We don't have any of the freedoms we still have left because they didn't go serve. We have freedoms. The reason why Japan or Germany didn't win is because men and women all over the world served, so we could be here and be speaking right now. I bet you I wouldn't be on this YouTube channel if other forces won. So I'm very thankful for that. At the same time, I see other countries obviously and very, very clearly trying to persuade young and youth away from joining the military. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And then, Dex, do you want to talk about China targets another U.S. ally's disputed territory?
Certainly. So now we've got, everything going on with the disputes in the South China Sea. We have all of the actions that have been happening in Japan as far as preparing for a conflict with China. And now China has moved their ire to, not moved, but added to, I should say, their desire to make sure it's clear that the lands that are in dispute with Japan are clearly disputed. And they're talking about putting their own, claiming that territory and putting their own equipment and vessels around it, etc. So this is now going to be yet another contentious area, specifically there in the Pacific, in a different location from Taiwan, which all of this is sort of created, in my opinion, to distract us and split us from the true path, which is Taiwan. That's where they're going next, and all of everything else is there to make it difficult for us to support Taiwan when they're busy with South Korea, when they're busy with Japan, when we're busy supporting the South China Sea and the Philippines. That's when they'll take Taiwan.
And the Diaoyu Islands, as China calls them, this is the same Senkaku Islands that Japan, these islands are the ones that Japan has used in their messaging to their government for them to be able to switch. Before Shinzo Abe, who perished, very much kind of reflecting against South Korea's opposition today, before he perished, he was pushing for an offensive country. His party was pushing for it. That only passed, many said, because of Shinzo Abe being taken out in the way he was. It literally overnight it changed the I guess the, what do you call it, the dial went right over. It was like all of a sudden all of the party members said, "Oh yeah, we want to be an offensive country." After that happened, I still think there's a lot of shady stuff with how that happened, why it happened. The story that they gave, whatever else. Things like this happen all the time in governments where people are taken out, operations are done to persuade the mass population or persuade government officials. Japan is a big deal because Japan is also this hot point for World War III, and now they're directly going to be pitted up against China. They don't want China taking Taiwan either. It's going to affect them. It's going to affect their shipping. It's going to affect their everything around Japan. And Japan is not one to change. Like, they don't like change. So it's a big deal for them to change their constitution practically overnight to be an offensive country, to change their budget now to be a military-centric country. But let alone, they don't change fast. They still use fax machines. They still prefer cash over anything else. They didn't have the equivalent of a social security number. The way that Japan is and was run was old school. If you see any of the videos going into Japan and into electronic stores and all these very high-tech places, they still do things wrote down. They write down things. They do a manual system of things. For that reason, is because it's so it's so backwards still, which is kind of cool in a lot of ways compared to what we're doing here. But again, I think that will come to an end too in Japan. All right, and let's see here. Just a reminder, if again you do want to freeze dry your own stuff, this is a great recommendation too. Make sure to go check out Harvest Right. These machines, once you invest in them, they are going to last for decades. These are extremely well-made machines. This is a freeze drying machine, so this can actually do the act of freeze drying. You can basically preserve any food and whatever food you want to get at whatever price you want to pay. You can do your own style. Again, you can end up freeze drying your whole garden. You can freeze dry things on the cheap. They say that it is about 25% or 30% of the cost of pre-packaged freeze dried foods. So it is an investment in the first place. But once you have it, depending on how much food you want to have for emergencies, if you have a big family and you want 6 a year of food, 6 months a year of food, then this will definitely pay itself off. If you're somebody who's living on their own, if you want to pick this up as a hobby, you can, but it might not be right for you. As far as a big family and you have a lot of food that you want to prep, then this is definitely the way to go. It's one of the most coveted machines, and during times like CV, these things were absolutely impossible to get. Everybody wanted one and there wasn't. So think about in the sense of if an emergency happens, you're not going to be able to get one. We know this because of every major disaster that's happened worldwide. These things have gone up insane prices. They've been scalped, or they were just impossible to get. So you definitely want to get something like this before an emergency, not after. Go to marfoogle.com/freeze for $300 off on the pro models. And again, that is with our code. So that's again, marfoogle.com/freeze. All right. And then thank you, by the way, Stephen McMahon. It looks like you went off. Sarah B., I don't know if you watched the replay, but I hope you made it through the whole show. Johnson over on DLive says, Foogle fam, love to all of you. Hey, thank you, Johnson, and thank you for supporting over on DLive. The Unreal Steve Martin, Priscilla R, Poco Loco, and One on B over on DLive. Thank you. Thank you, Chance, for holding it down over there. And thank you, Jammer. Thank you, of course, Ilea. Thank you. I don't know if Rip Curl's here tonight, but thank you. You've been making a lot of shows lately. And then Wages. I just want to say hi, and whether you're here or not, I just thank you and I appreciate you again for doing the holiday video. Make sure to go check that out. It was put out on Christmas Day, if you haven't already. And thank you for everybody that participated in that. Let's see here. And then Kimbria, thank you as well. Craig Lawnsinger says, appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Craig. And thank you for being here for a long time now. You've been here at least a couple of years. Thank you. And Carol, thank you. And Stephen McMahon says, off to work. Love y'all. We'll be praying tonight for your son at Sunset G. Sunset G, I don't know what happened to your son, but I'll be praying as well. Sorry to hear something's going on. And then, Dex, do you want to tell people how they can get to the website?
Absolutely. Go to marfooglenews.com. Click on today's thumbnail, which will match the show you're watching, and it'll take you to this page with all of the sources, everything we've talked about. If you want, you could also open the description on YouTube or Rumble, and you'll see a show notes link. It's right there. It'll take you right to the page, too. Speaking of Wages, I noticed he just put out a new video earlier about a solar tsunami. So if that interests you guys, go check out his channel. He just put that up, a tsunami that happened on the sun. And I think an X-flare, too, that may be coming our way.
Yeah, he did a great video the other day, so make sure not to miss him. And then, of course, if you want to follow me on Twitter, go over to @Marfoogle. Just type in @Marfoogle over on Twitter, and you will find my Twitter account. That, again, is where if I do put out something that, we wouldn't put in a community tab or something like that, that's where it would be. And there is always a current show. So if we post a show, I actually have a checklist of things I do. I make sure to tweet the link right before the show. So if you want the most current, this is like right before I press go live. That is normally when the tweet comes out, not the YouTube start time, not the 15-minute layover time. Right before I go live, I hit this. So if you want to conserve your time and obviously the 15 minutes you wait, If you want to wait and you don't want to miss a thing, always look at the Twitter link that is put out probably 20 seconds before we go live in most cases. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone for making it today. Thank your mods by dropping an M in the chat. Thank you, everybody that supported us in 2023. Again, over on PayPal. Thank you, guys. And could not say thank you enough. Again, being independent, it has been a rough few years, especially the last couple years. So we appreciate everybody that has helped out. Thank you. Again, Linda S., Don D., Jacqueline L., Dean G., Jeff B., Lisa H., Sheila B., Tony D., and Joanna H. Thank you, guys. Dex, thank you so much for your service tonight. I appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And it is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shish kebab. Gotcha. A shoutro. Wrong button. Something's not running out of breath.
Video, and photo, all being kept on the low. You don't need to feel like Frodo, seeing this crisis go global. Video, and photo, all being kept on the low.
All right, let's make a fresh one. And it looks like Richard Turner is top supporter tonight. Thank you, Richard Turner. And to my wife, I will be done in just a moment if you are in chat. She's got a dinner cooking. I can smell it. Thank you so much, Mrs. Marf.